afternoon, students. This is Arindam Bag here, Department of English, Maharaja Nandakumar Mahavidyalaya. Today, our topic is Beloved by Toni Morrison. So, without any delay, let's start this. So, what you got today? So, here is a slide which actually describes the background of the novel. As per this slide, as you can see from the beginning, that Beloved is a 1987 novel by the American writer Toni Morrison. It was set after the American Civil War, which happens to be between 1861 to 1865. It is inspired by the life of one Margaret Garner. She was an African American who escaped slavery in Kentucky in late January 1856 by crossing the Ohio River to Ohio, a free state. But unfortunately, she was captured, and during this process, she killed her child rather than have her taken back into slavery. So, this is the background of the novel. This is the storyline which we will see. We will see the development of the story in this novel. But mind it, this is a true story of Margaret Garner. So moving to the next slide, again we have this background also. Now, how Morrison was informed, or how Morrison got this idea. Morrison had come across an account of Garner, a visit to the slave mother who killed her child, in an 1856 newspaper article published in the American Baptist and reproduced in the Black Book, a miscellaneous compilation of black history and culture that Morrison herself edited in the year 1974. So she was informed. She was informed about this story, or she was already been familiar with this story because of an article which was published in a newspaper, in a paper, and the title was a visit to the slave mother who killed her child. So this is the background we have, and now next move to the next part. Now this particular novel owns several prizes, awards and recognitions. Now this particular slide will focus on that. So the novel won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in the year 1988 and also was a finalist for the 1987 National Book Award. It was adapted as a movie in the year 1998 with the same name, Beloved, starring Oprah Winfrey. Do you know this particular lady, Oprah Winfrey? Have you ever seen her show? If you're not familiar, go Google her and you will find what an excellent lady she is, and she is very much popular. A survey of writers and literary critics compiled by the New York Times ranked it as the best work of American fiction from 1981 to 2006. So you can see this particular book got so many awards and recognition, and Morrison became famous with this particular creation. Now let's move to the next slide. Now what you got here? So before we move further, we need to understand the themes. Now here I have find out at least 5 themes which can be seen in the particular novel. The first one is mother-daughter relationships. Look, maternal bonds between Sethe and her children. Sethe is the protagonist of this novel. I will get to that. So Sethe and her children inhabit her own individuation and prevent the development of herself. Now this is very common. Mothers are very dedicated. So they hardly care about themselves. Their primary objectives or their primary focus is on their children. Sethe is not an exception. Sethe develops a dangerous maternal passion that results in killing one daughter, her own best self. She was so much desperate that when she realized that she is going to be captured again, the moment she realized this, she thought that I am not going to bring my child with this captivity. So she killed her child. So this is a very deep bond actually. She do not want to see her child suffering. Her surviving daughter become estranged from the black community. Both outcomes result from Sete trying to salvage her fantasy of the future, her children from a life in slavery. In Ohio, Sete fails to recognize her daughter Denver's need for interaction with the black community in order to enter into womanhood. Now, it is obvious that a person who has gone through such a trauma uh, will be protective. Somehow she will be defensive in her attitude. She do not want to. She is not interested, or she is not going to take any risk which might actually put her daughter in danger. Her other daughter Denver, she needs she needs some sort of interaction with the black community, but Sete didn't allow to do so. So Sete only becomes individuated after beloved's exorcism. Beloved is the daughter. I will come to that also. Then she is free to fully accept the first relationship that is completely for her. Her relationship with Paul D. Paul D is another character with whom she developed a romantic relationship. I'll get to that also. I will tell you about that part, and I will mention that who is Paul D, how he is playing the role. So that will be given to you after this very slide. A character map will be given to you, and all the details of those characters will be given to you. So this is the character, this is the theme we got here, mother daughter relationship. And her surviving daughters become estranged from the black community. Both outcomes result from Sete to trying to salvage her fantasy of the future, her children from a life in slavery. In Ohio, she didn't realize that Denver also need to interact with the black community. I told you earlier. So we can see this relationship relieves her from the self-destruction she was causing based on her maternal bonds with her children. So the relationship between mother and daughter, they were so deep. Sometimes she is so much protective that actually she is choking the relationship. That means not good for the daughter. So this is a kind of maternal bond we can see over here. Beloved and Sete are both emotionally impaired. Yep. She has gone through a trauma. The trauma was so huge that maybe physically she recovered, but mentally she never recovered. Emotionally she never recovered, which becomes Seth having been enslaved. Under slavery, mothers lost their children with devastating consequences for both parties. Seth was traumatized by having had her milk stolen rather than being able to nurse her own child. It made her unable to form the symbolic bond between herself and her daughter. So this is the very first theme you will find there. Next is psychological effects of slavery. Because of the suffering under slavery, most person who had been enslaved tried to repress these memories in an attempt to forget the past. This repression and disassociation from the past causes a fragmentation of the self and a loss of true identity. Sethe, Paul D, and Denver all suffered a loss of self, which could only be reminded when they were able to reconcile their pasts and memories of earlier identities. Beloved serves to remind these characters of their repressed memories, eventually leading to the integration of their of their selves. Slaves splits a person into a fragmented figure, the identity consisting of painful memories and unspeakable past, denied and kept at bay, becomes a self that is no self. To heal and humanize, one must constitute it in a language, reorganize the painful events, and retell the painful memories. As a result of suffering, the self becomes subject to a violent practice of making and unmaking. Once acknowledged by an audience, becomes real. Sethe, Paul D, and Baby Sharks, who all fall short of such realization, are unable to remake their selves by trying to keep their pasts at bay. The self is located in a word defined by others. Power lies in the audience, or more precisely, in the word. Once the word changes, so does the identity. all the characters in Beloved face the challenge of an unmade self composed of their rememories and defined by perceptions and language. The barrier that keeps them from remaking of the self is the desire for an uncomplicated past and the fear that remembering will lead them to a place they could not get back from. So this is the second theme we got here. Now the third theme is definition of manhood. This is going to be the obvious theme of this novel. The discussion of manhood and masculinity is foreshadowed by the dominant meaning of Seth's story. Beloved depicts slavery in two main emotions. First, love and self-preservation. However, Morrison does more than depict emotions. The author dramatizes enslavement to speak of the morals of manhood. It also distorts a man from himself. Morrison revealed different pathways to the meaning of manhood by her stylistic devices. She established new information for understanding the legacy of slavery best depicted through stylistic devices. To understand Paul D's perception of manhood, Morrison deliberately inserts his half-formed words and thoughts to provide the audience a taste of what is going on inside his mind. Yet, throughout the novel, Paul D's depiction of manhood was being constantly challenged by the norms and values of white culture. The author demonstrates the distinctions between Western and African values and how the dialogue between the two values is hard through juxtaposition and allusions. She maneuvered her message through the social atmosphere of her words, which was further highlighted by the characters' motives and actions. Paul D is a victim of racism, in that his dreams and goals are so high that he will never be able to achieve them because of racism. He thought he earned his right to reach each of his goals because of his sacrifices, and he has been thorough that society would pay him back and allow him to do what his heart desired. During the Reconstruction era, Jim Crow laws were put in place to limit the movement and involvement of African Americans in the white dominant society. Black men during this time had to establish their own identity, which may seem impossible due to all the limitations put upon them. Many black men like Paul D struggle to find their meaning in the society and achieving their goals because of the disabilities that constrain them to a certain part of the social hierarchy. In Beloved, Stampede observes Paul D sitting on the base of the church steps, liquor bottle in hand, stripped of the very maleness that enables him to care and love the wounded, saith. This is, we got here, throughout the novel, Paul D is sitting on a base of some sort of a foundation like a tree stump or the steps for instances. This exemplifies his place in society. Black men are the foundation of society because without their hard labor, white men would not profit. They were coerced into the society where they were deemed lower status because of the color of their skin. So this is what you got, the definition of manhood. And then we have this family relationship. Moving to the next point, what is family relationships? This is also a theme in this novel. Family relationships are an instrumental element of Beloved. These family relationships help visualize the stress and the dismantlement of African American families in this era. The slavery system did not allow African Americans to have rights to themselves, to their family, belongings, and even their children. It is so cruel then. So Seth killing Beloved was deemed a peaceful act because Seth believed that killing her daughter was saving them. And by doing this, their family is divided and fragmented, much like the time they were living in. After the Emancipation Proclamation was signed, ex-slaves' families were broken and bruised because of the hardships they faced as slaves. Since slaves could not participate in social events, they put their faith and trust in the supernatural. They did rituals and prayed to their god or multiple gods. In the novel, Seth's child Beloved, who was murdered by the hands of her mother, haunts her. For example, Seth, Denver, Paul, D go to the neighborhood carnival, which happens to be Seth's first social outing since killing her daughter. When they return home, that is when Beloved appears at the house. Throughout the novel, Seth believes that the person claiming to be Beloved is her daughter that she killed 18 years prior, a scenario which shows how fractured family relationships are used to display the mental strife the protagonist faces. So, this is the fourth theme we discussed over here. The next and the last theme will be pain. So, the pain throughout this novel is universal because everyone involved in slavery was heavily scarred, whether that be physically, mentally, socially, or psychologically. Some of the characters tend to romanticize their pain in a way that each experience is a turning point in one's life. This concept is played throughout history in early Christian contemplative tradition and African American blues tradition. Beloved is a book of the systematic torture that ex-slaves had to deal with after the Emancipation of Proclamation. Therefore, in this novel, the narrative is like a complex labyrinth because all the characters have been stripped away from their voice, their narrative, their language in a way that their sense of self is diminished. Also, all the characters have had different experiences with slavery, which is why their stories and their narrative are distinct from each other. In addition to pain, many major characters try to beautify pain in a way that diminishes what was done. For example, Seth keeps repeating what a white girl said about her scars on her back, calling them a choke cherry tree. Happens because she got some marks on her back, trunk, branches, and even leaves. She repeats this to everyone, suggesting she is trying to find the beauty in her scar, even when they caused her extreme pain. Paul D and Baby Suggs both look. Baby Sugg is another character. I will get to that also in the next presentation. This presentation is getting long, so I will conclude this after after explaining this theme, and then we will create another presentation. So today we will have back-to-back two presentations. Wait for the next one. The memory of her ghost-like daughter plays a role of memory, grief, and spite that separates Seth and her late daughter. For instance, Beloved stays in the house with Paul D and Seth. A home is a place of vulnerability, where the heart lies. Paul D and Baby Suggs both suggest that Beloved is not invited into the home, but Seth says otherwise because he sees Beloved all grown and alive instead of the pain of when Seth murdered her. So these are the 5 themes we got here. So thank you for watching, and please like, share, and subscribe my channel. I will show you a surprising statistics in my next presentation. The presentation doesn't end here. We still have some sort of left over. So I will start the next presentation from this very character map. Thank you again. Thank you for watching.